Good evening, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and call to order the Thursday, August 27th, 2020 meeting of the Clive City Council. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Cirksena.
Here.
Councilmember Klein.
Here.
Edwards.
Here.
McCoy. Judkins. Weaver.
Here.
Okay, we've got 3 council members. I'm sure the others will be joining us shortly, but we do have a quorum and able to start. We have young Kalia Coffeville that's with us today, the young scout that's going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Kalia, please tell us about yourself.
I am 12 years old and I go to Waukee Middle School. I am a first class scout in Troop 208 and yeah, I'm in 7th grade.
Well, that's excellent. Sounds like you're well on your way, and thank you again for taking your time to come and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would do so now, I'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisibly, with liberty and justice for all.
Very good. Thank you, Kalia, for leading us. Thank you. Good luck in your scouting, and good luck as a 7th grader. We'll look forward to having you back again sometime to lead us. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next item is approval of the agenda.
Move approval. Second.
Moved by Eric, seconded by John. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? The agenda is approved. Okay, the next item is citizens presentation. This is where anybody that's joining us in our meeting telephonically to address the council on an item that is not on the agenda. Is there anybody here to do so this evening? If so, please let Pete the cook know, and we can get you online here.
So tonight, folks, if you'd like to catch my attention, the best way to do that, if you're participating by video, is to go down to the participant icon in the black bar at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you click on that, a separate window will pop open, and there will be a hand raise icon that you can touch if you would like to catch our attention. We do have a couple folks, one person who I don't recognize. Actually, the 2 people who are participating by phone, Mayor, one of them is Jim Hagley and the other one is Richard Brown. So everybody else on the call tonight is participating by video and should be able to use that hand raise function.
Okay, if there's anybody to address the council on an item that is not on the agenda, please raise your hand. Otherwise, we're going to move on.
I don't see any hands, sir.
Seeing none, we'll move to consent items.
Move the resolution.
Second.
Moved by John, seconded by Eric. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, will the council please vote? That item passes, well, 4 with 1 not present. Thank you. Okay, now we're going to move to really our first item, which is a presentation regarding the Westcom update and strategic plan. And Matt, I'll let you lead that.
All right, Pete, you want to let me screen share? We should. Oh, there you go. Hang on. All right. It's full screen mode. So happy to bring this forward to the council tonight. I'm going to have some kind of starting comments here and then turn it over to Chief Darren Riney with Westcom, who is here to kind of go through the meat of the presentation. But this, since I became chair of the Westcom Management Committee, once I moved into this role as your city manager back in January 2018, one item that came up consistently with all the member communities is, we've never really sat down and put together a strategic plan for Westcom of where we're at today and where we want to be 5-10 years from now. And since then, we, as we got some of the organization figured out, we allocated it in a future budget. And over this past year, we're able to go through a strategic planning process with a facilitator, BDS, and Chief Riney will speak to their work here in a minute. But it was a great process. Of course, we had the pandemic kind of start in the middle of it. We also had some other issues, but so it delayed us a few months. But we were still able to, through Zoom meetings like this, have a great dialogue and discussion amongst all the 5 member communities. And I think what we have to show you today, I'm very excited about in terms of really what I would call the next evolution of Westcom. It served us very well for, many years that we've had this collaboration that's been, recognized statewide and even regionally in terms of the 5 cities coming together for a public safety answering dispatch center. But I think we've got some great things before us as well, and the potential to add, maybe other member communities along the way. So very excited to show you this tonight, and also give Chief Riney an opportunity just to give you a general update on Westcom, how we've been operating through the pandemic. I know the chiefs and I have kind of talked a little bit about how the calls for service really fluctuated as we were with the beginning of the pandemic and how we're operating today. And I think Chief Riney will be able to show you some interesting stats of kind of Westcom wide what we've been experiencing. So with that, I wanted to turn it over to Chief Riney to go through this. I'm going to kind of work the slides for him, and then also have our chiefs, Chief Venema and Chief Rowe, at the end maybe speak a little bit to their involvement in the process as well, and then field any questions you may have. So with that, Chief Riney, I will turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Mayor and Council and the public for joining us through this. Matt kind of spoke to where we're headed in the future. For those that aren't familiar, I want to kind of give a little bit of a background with this. Westcom is a consolidated 911 dispatch facility that receives the public safety related calls and dispatches for police, fire, and emergency medical services for those cities shown now. Prior to January of 2001, Clive, Urbandale, and West Des Moines each had separate and independent public safety dispatch centers staffed by their respective city employees 24 hours a day, every day. And in 2002, Westcom began dispatching for the city of Norwalk, and then Waukee came on board with us in July of 2015. With the shared partnership of these cities through a 2080, they've been able to facilitate centralized services and cost sharing, with funding currently based on the population of those cities. Westcom has completed their first strategic plan process and established some aggressive goals to continue to move Westcom forward and to better serve the cities, responders, and the public we serve. While we're here to present the strategic plan to the mayor and council, I want to update you on current events and how the COVID pandemic has affected our cities from the perspective of Westcom. Starting with the police statistics, you see the city of Clive there on the far left. Comparing the first 6 months of 2019 to the same time frame of 2020, Chief Venema and his team are down about 20%. Comparing those months to last year. Those numbers are actually very skewed though, because the numbers were off considerably more than that for just March, April, and May during the initial onset of the COVID restrictions, which looks like we're getting ready to go right back into again. Matt, if you could, thank you. For that same time frame for Chief Rowe and his fire and EMS departments, they were down about 5% in call volume compared to last year, with less people out and about, and several that just didn't call. There's no surprise those numbers were down. Interesting thing with those numbers is that with the months of March, April, and May, the majority of all departments served by Westcom were down by over 30% compared to last year. Matt, there you go. Westcom, for example, in April, May, and June this year was at 35% less call volume than normal. And since things have started to reopen and people are moving about again, we've returned to being just within 8% of normal call volume, and we do expect to surpass last year's numbers. The month of April versus the month of July, was a difference of over 5,000 calls just between those 2 months. The Iowa hurricane that blew through a couple of weeks ago will lend a hand to surpassing last year's numbers, as that one day we saw call volume 2.5 times our normal average, with over 1,200 calls being handled that single day. With the reduction of some calls, there's also been readjusted as to where those calls are occurring. For all jurisdictions, some of the call types that we've seen have been a large decrease in our traffic related. Traffic accidents alone are down by over 500 in just March, April, and May. On the other side of the spectrum, we've seen an increase in calls that were categorized as nuisance or noise complaints, and those were directly related to complaints of large gatherings of people or people calling in about someone being out when they feel that they shouldn't be due to COVID. Some impressive numbers across our service area are the population growth numbers between the last census to the projected numbers for 2020. All cities in our service area have grown over the past 10 years, anywhere from the nearly 10% in Clive to almost 90% in Waukee. Obviously, this does impact the city's cost share for Westcom services, as that funding is based on population. Current rate for these cities works out to be about $27.50 per resident per year. And comparing that to other areas, those numbers aren't the easiest to compile, as each state has different metrics and standards for reporting. The two most recent reports providing information shows that Colorado's current rate is $45 per person, and Michigan is coming in at $47.50. Both of those are strictly for 911 service only and not utilized to support the responders through technology or systems as the current model with Westcom does. While we hear that Westcom is expensive based on the shared cost model and with how Westcom is utilized as a pass-through for shared systems of all the agencies, we are still considered being efficient for what we are doing. Iowa actually stopped producing their similar report back in 2017. Anyway, some interesting numbers, but onto the strategic plan recently completed. Westcom released an RFP for the very first strategic plan for the department and received interest from 17 different vendors. Those were narrowed down to 5 consultants to interview, and then the one being chosen, BDS Planning and Urban Design. They've been working with Westcom in the cities over the past 8 months to complete their project, and I'm very pleased to present their final product to you. Many hours have been spent in looking at the department and how it functions. My specialist on 911 systems and services was utilized and made recommendations, and numerous interviews and observations were made with our responder agencies and the cities. Recommendations were made and goals were developed to continue to move Westcom forward as an agency and also in the services that we provide. 3 main focuses of the goals include the structure and makeup of Westcom and the management committee that oversees Westcom, the service levels being provided and expectations for our agency, and a roadmap for the future for planning and development as an agency. Through this plan, we have some aggressive goals as a department, and all of them considered the needs and desires of our partner agencies and communities to ensure that we continue to provide the needed services to the best of our abilities. With that, I'd entertain any questions or comments that you might have, and if there are none, I'll turn the podium back over. And I know Matt was going to allow his chiefs to speak up, and I'd like to give them that opportunity.
Yeah, thanks, Chief. Just to jump in a little bit more too on some of the items, especially this goal summary. Obviously, there's more detail in the strategic planning document was included in the packet. But I think what's really key here is what you see on the screen of some pretty bold steps that we're talking about with Westcom. And I can tell you that all 5 member communities were supportive of what you see on the screen. We did not bring anything forward in the strategic plan that had disagreement. So I think there's a recognition that for this to be a long-term sustainable model, that we do need to get it to a sense of an independent organization, not necessarily burdening, one community, with West Des Moines being the operating contractor community, with, the size that Westcom has grown to. So that's something they're interested in. That's something that the other 4 member communities are interested in. And I presented this, the chief and I presented this to the city of West Des Moines. They were our first presentation here last week. And we had a really good dialogue on that. And that's something they're very interested in learning more about and what that looks like. And knowing that some of this might actually require legislative approval to make it happen, to have this kind of model set up. And that's really why we gave ourselves 5 years to work on it, is knowing that there's legal discussions in terms of organization setup and what's allowed under law, Iowa law, and what can we do to bring that forward. I think the funding model that we've created for Westcom is still very sustainable in terms of all the 5-member communities, with it being on a population basis. So I don't think there's necessarily a change that's being proposed there. But I think this, this first goal that's listed on here is a pretty bold and aggressive step that we're interested in looking at. So with that, there's also opportunities, for other member communities to potentially join in future years. And we wanted to really make sure at Westcom we had a prescribed process for how we're going to do that, knowing that the 2080 agreement likely needs updating and hasn't been updated for quite some time, and that we want to make sure it's responsive to the current needs of Westcom and even the current members and any potential new members. And then finally, all these 5-member communities are growing, some of them growing quite substantially. And we know that, the setup over at Station 19 will last for a while, but it's only going to last for so long. And so let's get ahead of the game in terms of, we know there's going to be some facility needs, and potentially if we have other member communities joining at some point in the future, how do we plan for that and make a decision as an organization? Okay, this is what we will allow in terms of growth, and let's make sure we're planning a facility that's responsive to that. So really happy with how this went, and also appreciated Mayor Sirksina's time and the other mayors from the member communities who were involved in the focus groups with this strategic planning effort. But before I turn it over to the mayor, just to have any comments he might have, I wanted to give Chief Rowe and Chief Venema an opportunity to make any comments on the process and from their perspective.
Chief Rowe. This is Chief Rowe. I'll jump in. Just a short walk through history. Back when Westcom was formed, originally the management for that on the day-to-day basis was a part-time assignment to a police officer. That rotated over the years through some different folks, and most recently it was a part-time or partial assignment for West Des Moines EMS Chief Dummermuth, and he did a great job with that for a number of years. But Chief Riney is actually our first full-time director, and I think when you couple his excellent leadership with a strategic plan, it really puts us in a good place. We've got a solid vision, solid direction. We know what we need to be working on. And, even today on a day-to-day basis, the service from Westcom is excellent. I think there's a lot of people jealous of the service that we get from them. And as the fire chief, I'm very appreciative of that. The other piece of history before I close is, since the inception of Westcom, the Clive city manager has always been the chair. So Dennis Henderson served us very well for a number of years, particularly when Westcom was being formed. And, Matt serves us very, very well in that role right now. So the leadership, the strategic plan, and everything has us in a very good place.
And Chief Venema here. Came here 8 years ago. I'd had experience with another consolidated dispatch system, really a high quality dispatch system. But after getting here, I was very impressed where Westcom was and the service they were providing especially to our police officers. In the last 8 years, I've seen a lot of growth. We've brought Norwalk and Waukee on. They obviously see the quality that we've got here with Westcom, and they wanted to get on board. I'm very excited about the process of moving forward. It's nice to see us evolving in a thoughtful way to set us up for long-term success and growth when growth makes sense. So hats off to Chief Riney, and we look forward to the next 18 years of Westcom.
So thank you, Chiefs. With that, Mayor Sirksina, any comment? I know you were involved with myself with kind of one of the focus groups. Just wanted to give you an opportunity if there's anything that you wanted to say.
Thank you, Matt. I want to touch on one point that was made by Chief Rowe, and that is that from the beginning, Clive has been at the table of leadership in really what started out as an experiment in collaboration, an experiment that really has evolved into probably one of the proudest collaborations, regional collaborations that you know that we've had, I think, in our existence. Certainly an example that we like to share and speak to as we talk about working with our neighbors, being a good neighbor, collaborating, sharing resources, finding ways to do things better. And now this experiment has evolved into what it is. Now it's time to take it to the next level. And so I'm really excited to see this plan. I'm excited to see the future. Excited to see the growth that has been achieved in a relatively short period of time. And I appreciate everyone's great work on just really a proud example that we have in collaboration. So Matt, thank you. And Chief Riney, thank you for your leadership and for being here tonight. Matt, is there anything else that you have?
No, just would turn it over to, questions and comments from the council as we've been going through strategic planning here. We've got some action items that we're listing on there in terms of some of what you see on the screen, in terms of updating the 2080 agreement and things that we'll work through from a more detailed action step standpoint. But other than that, just happy to turn it over to any questions or comments from the council.
Council, questions?
Yeah, I've got a quick question. Sorry. Could you walk us through the steps quickly to how Westcom achieves independence?
So yeah, sure. So what it would take is the main thing is having the authorizing legislation in the state to allow a public safety answering point to be set up as an independent agency. So what does that mean? It doesn't necessarily mean that the control changes from what it is today in terms of the 5-member communities. That can very much stay the same. It is whether or not we want to create a separate legal entity that then has its own staff support, its independence, the financials of how it's operated is removed from the city of West Des Moines. So one thing that they brought up to us, for example, in conversations is the Westcom's financials are kind of buried within the city of West Des Moines financials, and they find that because of the size of Westcom that can be problematic for them from an auditing standpoint. It's not something they can definitely do it, and they have been doing it. It's just something that it would be because of the size and the responsibilities and the liabilities too that go along with running a PSAP, that it is something that having an independent agency would offer us more flexibility. So as West Des Moines makes decisions for their organization, sometimes we're a little bit tied to that. Westcom is, in terms of what they may be doing from an IT standpoint or an HR standpoint. I think there's a desire on the behalf of Westcom at some point that we're going to grow to the size of enough that to have our own flexibility in some of those areas, not necessarily being tied to one individual city, is something that all the 5-member cities desire with this collaboration.
And I have a question on the goal 1 with the formation of an executive committee. Can you speak to that a little bit more? Does each community get 1 rep? Is it based off per capita? Is it staff and elected, just elected? How long are the terms? That kind of stuff.
So one thing we've realized here in terms of this next evolution of Westcom is the current model of the Westcom Management Committee can be somewhat challenging. We're asking the individual chiefs who represent the member communities to make some pretty significant financial decisions on behalf of their city. Not that the chiefs haven't done a great job of being those stewards. There was a question, I think, from more the city's standpoint of these large financial decisions, whether there shouldn't be an exec committee. And one of our thoughts has been whether it's each of the 5 city managers from the 5-member communities, or maybe having elected official involvement. We haven't necessarily prescribed that, but having a smaller exec committee that looks maybe at those bigger decisions that have more long-term budget implications that the 5-member cities have to finance in some form or fashion. And that it wasn't necessarily the right fit for the operations committee, that is more what the management committee ends up being. And again, credit to the chiefs for being able to work through some pretty significant investments over a number of years here, but we just felt that there was a better way to do it. And this is something that we talked quite a bit about that can we have that, still have that operations committee where the chiefs are very much in the weeds in terms of what they want the PSAP to be and supporting their first responders and the member agencies, but that we would have a smaller executive group that would go maybe adopt, go through adopting the budget or reviewing the budget every year, significant investments, whether it's from a capital standpoint or staffing requests, that kind of what city managers serve for their individual cities before it's presented to the city councils, kind of having that additional layer that is more specific to those bigger questions that are going to have long-term impacts to each member community.
So the structure of that committee, though, really hasn't been defined yet at this point. Is that correct?
Correct. It hasn't been.
Other questions or comments, council? Okay, well, Matt, we're going to look forward to seeing this plan evolve and aspects like the executive committee, to Ted's point, and to see recommendations there. So I know a lot of good work to come. Anything else, Matt?
I appreciate that, and I want to give a lot of kudos to Chief Riney for coming on and being our full-time chief, and the staff has said very high marks about Chief Riney, and it's been a testament of how Westcom has been able to deal with some challenging situations here in the past year, whether it's the pandemic and other technology issues that they've had to work through. And having Chief Riney's leadership has been very valuable to me as the chair of the management committee. But I appreciate getting the opportunity to help lead this collaborative agency and take it to the next level.
Thank you, Matt. Chief Riney, thank you as well, and look forward to our next steps together. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move to action items now. We have two public hearings. Action item number one, public hearing number one, is regarding the 2020 arterial PCC rehabilitation project. And Matthew, did we post appropriate public notice?
Yes, Your Honor. It was published 8/10/2020 in the Des Moines Register.
Thank you, Matthew. The first is a resolution approving plans and specifications. And Jim.
One moment, Your Honor. Jim, you should be able to unmute yourself. Jim, this is Pete. Are you able to hear us?
Jeff, due to the just delay with Jim, would you go ahead and take this item for him?
One moment.
All right, thank you. Couldn't unmute myself there. This is a project we let earlier in the year. As you remember, we got one bid at the time that came in quite high. We re-let it. We received no bids. I know Jim called and talked to several of them, and the reason for it was, or a couple of them, I should say, not several of them, because there wasn't a lot of them out there, but they were backed up and just didn't have time to fit it in right now, so to say. And looking at next year, they were concerned about what carryover they might have with some of the delays from this year. Beyond that, Jim talked to him a little bit about why or whether they were able to handle the night work. They were more than comfortable with it. It just came down to a timing thing for at this time. Our plan is to put this package together with some more from next year and put it out as a project early in the year and give them a chance to bid it probably in the January, February timeframe before the construction season starts.
So Jim, the only requested action tonight is just to approve the revised plans and specifications as it relates to the project.
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Moved by John, seconded by Ted to close the public hearing. Before we do so, is there anybody here to speak on this item?
One moment, Your Honor. I don't see any hands going up.
Seeing none, will the council please vote? Passes four in favor to close the public hearing.
Move the resolution approving the plans and specs.
Second.
Moved by John, seconded by Eric. Further discussion? Seeing none, will the council please vote? And that passes 4 in favor. Thank you. Thank you, Jeff and Jim, if you're out there somewhere. Okay, the next public hearing is regarding US Highway 6 Adaptive Signal Control Implementation Contract. Matthew, did we post appropriate public notice?
Yes, Your Honor, that was published August 10th, 2020 in the Des Moines Register.
Thank you, Matthew. And Jeff, we have you once again, sir.
I am very pleased to bring you this tonight.
I am pleased to have you bring it to us tonight.
Well, I'm glad to have it before you to act upon. It's been a long time coming anyway. The Adaptive Traffic Control Contract will put Hickman Road into operation in a similar fashion that University operates. It is intended to improve operations along that corridor. As we bring it to you, we went out for bids, or we sent proposals out from 8 firms. We received proposals from 3 firms. We reviewed those through the DOT process, made a selection, put a contract together, sent it off to the state. That took several months because of COVID and some other things to get approval, and then it had to go to federal. It's now all approved, and it's here before you for approval for us to move forward. There's a grant that covers most of this, as you notice there. Our cost is very reasonable for what we're going to get out of this. So I give it to you and I'll be glad to answer any questions. We also have Todd Knox from Snyder & Associates on the line if there's any specific questions or details that need to be. I know I gave you a lot of documents. I think there's over 300. I hope you all had time to browse them, but didn't spend too much time reading them in detail.
Council, questions or comments for Jeff?
Jeff, just out of curiosity, why does it take 9 months? You can't have it done next month?
Well, there's going to be, I would love to, but 9 months right now sounds great compared to how long it's taken to get to this point. I'll be honest with you. So,
yeah.
No, there's some ordering time. There's some design time on their end. They asked for 9 months. I don't think it'll take quite that long, but with the winter in the middle, kind of where we are now, don't know when we'll be ready to start. Originally, as we were setting this up, we were talking about April. Then as we were unsure of the actual execution date, they just asked for 9 months. And I guess I agreed to it happily just to get this thing signed and get it started and get it into service as soon as we can here.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Moved by John, seconded by Eric to close the public hearing. Before we do so, is there anybody here to speak on this item?
One moment, Mayor. I do not see any hands.
Seeing none, will the council please vote? Passes 4 in favor to close the public hearing.
Move the resolution approving plans and specs.
Second.
Moved by John, seconded by Eric. Further discussion? Seeing none, will the council please vote? Passes 4 in favor.
Move to receive the proposal.
Second.
Moved by John, seconded by Eric. Further discussion? Seeing none, will the council please vote? Item passes 4 in favor.
Move the resolution awarding the contract to Intellite Inc. for 221,314.
Second.
Moved by John, seconded by Eric. Further discussion? Seeing none, will the council please vote? That item passes 4 in favor. Jeff, thank you and look forward to your progress of 4.5 months installation.
We'll keep you updated.
Thank you and good luck. We look forward to your updates. Okay, item 3 is a site plan amendment at 11206 and 11264 Hickman Road, Smart Honda. Amanda.
Mayor, Council, good evening. As you said, tonight we have the site plan amendment for the Smart Honda properties. There are actually 2 lots, as you can see on the map over here. As a customer or anyone from the general public, you would typically look at this and think it was just one property. But you can see it is actually 2 separate lots. So what is being proposed is to demolish the existing building that sits on this property. It formerly was the used sales office. Those uses have been kind of reconfigured. They're now in the main dealership building over here. So this building doesn't really serve any useful purpose to the dealership any longer. And they would like to construct a new detail building to move their vehicle detailing operations to the back of the other property that has the main dealership on it. You can see that here. Hickman Road is right here. Excuse me. Board of Adjustment did grant a variance for this request. In 2008, the City Council had adopted some additional requirements for car dealerships. This development happened in the 80s, so predates those additional requirements. So it is built to the minimum of the underlying zoning district. So they have, which would be a 15% open space. At the time, the vehicle display setback was not the 15-foot parking lot setback we have in our code today. And then there's additionally a requirement in the ordinance that any lot used as a car lot or auto dealership have a building on it of a minimum square footage. So Board of Adjustment granted that variance. So this property will not have a building on it at all. It will just be vehicle display and stock area. But then they do exceed their minimum open space for the zoning ordinance for the district in that C2 zone, but they don't meet the full 25% that would be required of an auto dealership. They're right around 20% between the 2 properties. One item that was discussed with Planning and Zoning Commission and they recommended changes on was the proposed exterior materials. Initially, a proposal was just to have a metal siding building, and the applicant has switched this out to be an architectural panel rather than kind of your Morton building metal siding. It's a little hard to tell on the renderings here, but this is a very similar material to what you see further down Hickman that's on like the Volvo dealership and some of those. We also have their website here, so you can see it's a different construction method than just kind of the metal sheet siding, which is not allowed under the design standards within the C2 zoning district. So staff is happy with those changes that they've made on that. So that comment from Planning and Zoning has been addressed. For the landscaping on the site, they are putting some parking lot screening here. As most of you have probably seen, they're doing some work on the main dealership building. That was approved last year at the car wash addition and the facade update. So this landscaping here is consistent with what was approved to be on the other property. So I'm guessing that will be installed around the same time. So that will match. There's also quite a few new trees being planted on the properties. Additionally, some more planted along Hickman Road to create a better buffer back here. And there are some plantings along either side of the detail building There is one revision that they are still working on with that, is to add a little bit more species diversity along those plantings that are immediately adjacent to the building. I believe the derecho had a little delay. They're located in Ankeny, their offices, so they were out without power for a little bit there. So we're waiting on that, but we're confident we'll get those revisions and aren't concerned about that process. For the utilities, the sanitary and water are connecting to existing on site. There is a new hydrant being installed that will make sure that the detail building is within that appropriate serviceable range. There's a sand oil separator going in right around here in the parking lot to capture anything that might come off those, the detailing that's happening, though it's not a full car wash. And then there is nothing additional required for the stormwater management. They're actually increasing the open space that's currently on site today. So there was nothing more that we needed from them on that. They're adding multiple islands. One area that won't meet the current code today is on the lot here. They would need an island in this area and in this area to break up, so there's no more than 15 spaces in a row. We think it's reasonable at the staff level to delay that installation until they are actually resurfacing this lot, which will be at some point in the next several years that maintenance will be needed. So just to kind of have less site disturbance, we were comfortable delaying those installations until they were actually working on that property. At this time, they're really only disturbing right where the building was. So it'll limit kind of the impact where they have a lot already going on the site. So with that, staff would recommend approval of the plans, and Mr. Hanson and Mr. Kelly are both on the call tonight if you do have any questions.
Thank you, Amanda. Council questions or comments for Amanda?
Move approval.
Second.
Moved by Eric, seconded by John. Further discussion? Seeing none, will the council please vote? And that item passes 4 in favor. Thank you, Amanda. And just to our friends at Smart Honda, I think I can speak on behalf of all of us. It's great to see you continually making investments in your property. That just benefits all of us. So thank you for your investments and for your confidence in Clive as you do so. Appreciate that very much. Okay, we're going to move to reports now. And Pete, I'm going to start with you.
Mr. Mayor, before we do so, is there an agenda item on police protective equipment that we need to approve?
Your Honor, if I could chime in here, I think there might have been some confusion here. So I don't know, and sometimes it's the voting system too. So maybe I miscommunicated. I was anticipating that somebody might want to pull that from the consent agenda, and so we hadn't pulled it yet. And so it was technically approved as a part of the consent agenda, but I think if there was an intent to discuss, to review that separately, that might have been a confusion on staff's part. We did not do that proactively ahead of the meeting. So I don't know, Matthew, if is that showing up on their side of things in terms of the agenda?
It was already pulled from the consent agenda that I have as my, on my agenda, so I didn't bring it up.
Okay, yeah, because it wasn't showing that on my side, so I don't have the voting function, so maybe that's where it is. So
it's not on the agenda. I will tell you, it's not on the agenda that I have, and this is the one that Matthew sent to me with speakers, et cetera, kind of the final. So if there's a discussion item, let's discuss it.
Well, for us, it's the only place it exists is item 1 under action items. So when we approved the consent agenda, we didn't have this issue. We could wait and deal with it in a couple of weeks.
Well, I can confirm that it has been pulled down from the consent list, and that was preemptive and probably should not have taken place. But as you approved the agenda, the official agenda that is here has it as a separate action item.
Well, then I don't know why it's not on mine, but it is what it is. So if we have an action item 1, Let's reflect that appropriately, and let's talk about it, and let's answer questions, and let's take action.
Your Honor, I would move approval of action item 1 regarding the 10 sets of personal protective gear.
I'd second that.
It's moved by Eric, seconded by John. Is there discussion?
I had a question or two for the chief, if I could. Chief, did we check with any other vendors, or how did we come up with this vendor and this quote?
This particular vendor is a vendor we use for a lot of our police equipment. We checked a couple other vendors, and the pricing that Ray O'Haron gives us is competitive, and we're familiar with them and have worked with them quite often. So that's how we picked them.
Okay, very good. And then what's the time? So if assuming we approve this and it's funded, what's the timing on obtaining the gear? How long does that take?
That I haven't heard yet. Once we get the order in, I'm sure we'll hear back. It may be a situation where these sorts of pieces of equipment are on a back order, but we can certainly update you when we know.
Yeah, that would be good. Thank you.
Sure.
Other questions, council, or discussion on this item?
I had a question about the use of police seizure funds. And this is just more of a process issue, but do we always have to have use of those funds come to the council for approval?
Well, I believe that it is because of the amount. Generally, there have been use of seizure funds are kind of a discretionary funding for police chiefs. Usually don't supplant the budgetary process, but due to how things kind of came about, instead of waiting and waiting another year for a budgetary process, I felt it was a good use of that drug seizure money, that we put it to good use protecting our officers.
If I could add into the chief's comments just on the purchasing limit, our purchasing policy requires any capital expenditure of this sort above $5,000 requires it to come before the council for approval.
Okay, well, I just have a comment that I think you made a compelling case that really each officer should have their own individual set. And it seems at a time when we're dealing with things like COVID-19, there's a lot of good reason for that. So
sure, I appreciate that, and we really hope we never have to use any of this equipment. But we've had 10 sets, and when things got a little bit interesting with our neighbors recently, and our officers were using it, we found out very quickly that 10 sets don't work out very well, especially if we get into a situation where those 10 sets are used for a shift, and then the next 10 officers come in and pass off a bunch of sweaty riot gear. And we wanted to make sure that we got things fitting well, and that our officers will be able to take care of that gear, and hopefully it just remains in storage for the life of it.
Other questions, council?
Well, that's a good question, actually. While we're still in Diamond, do we have the room to store all of this extra equipment?
We'll be creatively finding space. We've got a couple ideas, but our current storage closet is pretty full. But we've got some areas that we can shoehorn them into, I think, for now.
Ken, I think your garage was a consideration. We're still vetting that option.
Yeah.
You haven't seen my garage lately.
It's been moved and seconded. Seeing nothing further, will the council please vote?
Mayor, this is Pete. Did you want to see if there was any member from the audience who wanted to comment from the public?
Not really, but I guess being that you brought it up, is there someone here to speak on the side?
I don't mean to force your hand, Mayor. I just know that there was some confusion about the agenda, and I don't know if other people saw that confusing action item. One moment.
Let's clear this confusion. Thank you.
And if you would like to, you can use the raise hand function. Mayor, I do not see any hands.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Will the council please vote? Item passes 4 in favor. Thank you. Now, Pete, we're back to you for reports.
Thank you, Your Honor. Tonight, I just have one topic to report on. That's the census. And we know how important that is to every community in the United States when it comes to understanding how we are represented at other levels of government, and also understanding how taxes paid by Clive residents at the state and at the federal level come back and represent as investments in making quality of life and the quality of our built environment very high. I'm happy to report that at this point, with just over a month still, at least a month still left in opportunities for people to self-report, can complete their survey, we have exceeded the self-reporting percentage that we had in 2010. We are now at 78.6% versus 78.4%, which was our 2010 number. And at this point, we only trail Urbandale in among metro cities by about 0.6% or even a little bit less in self-response rate. There are 2 census tracts in Clive right now that are performing under their 2010 performance level. One is in the far western tract of Clive, which also includes parts of Urbandale and Waukee, so it's not exactly representative of just Clive. There we're at 75.1%, and in 2010 we were at 79.3%. The one census tract that does include only Clive, that it currently is not performing as well as it did in 2010, is tract 112.05. That's the area that's roughly aligns with the first planning district, or what we're calling the 86th Street neighborhoods in Clive. They're currently at 58.3%, and they finished 2020 at 63.6%. We have some strategies that we'd like to deploy over the next month to make sure that we get those numbers up, and we'll get numbers up throughout the entire metro. The first strategy is that when folks open their utility bill on the first few days of September, they're going to see a letter that's very focused on how important it is for everybody to finish the survey and how quick and easy it is to do it as well. After that, our intention is to do a postcard mailing that will go out to specifically mailable addresses in the first planning district, that 112.05 census tract. We think that that's going to help remind a few more folks that this is safe and that it's the law and that it really is something that all their neighbors are doing, and it benefits the entire community and can benefit them and their families as well. Beyond that, we'll continue to give it a good nudge from through our social media and with stories on the city's Facebook. And we'll also use the other newsletters that go out from Library, Parks, and Rec, and some other email communications that'll give us a chance to keep pushing those numbers up. The Census Bureau at this point says that the final collections will happen in the month of September. There are some legal challenges to that, where some outside groups are pushing to keep that sort of self-response period open till October. We will watch that closely, but currently we're going to play as if we only have one more month to go and we want to finish as strong as we can.
Well, Pete, you addressed the question that I had in your last comments there, and so it's a short time frame difference, but we have groups that want to keep that response time open as long as possible, and I think that the Census Bureau wants to wrap things up when they're ready. That's essentially the situation.
Yes, sir. That's the situation.
Sorry, go ahead.
It'll be interesting to see how the legal process works out. There's a lot of moving pieces right now.
Other questions for Pete on this? Pete, anything else for the group?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you, Pete. We'll move then to Ted.
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Thank you, Ted. Eric?
The only thing tonight, Mayor, is that Councilwoman Judkins and I attended a ribbon cutting for Steamboat Boys restaurant, a new restaurant here in Clive. And glad to welcome a new business.
It's always a great day in Clive and a ribbon's getting cut, right? Thank you for being here.
We use that line too.
Yeah, good. That's excellent. Anything else, Eric? Okay, thank you. Let's see, John.
Nothing for me tonight.
Just would say to the council that looking forward to, as we wrap up our strategic planning again for this year, we'll look forward to seeing everybody tomorrow at 1 o'clock, right, Matt? And I'm sure you'll have other comments on this, but just wanted to say that I've appreciated everybody's hard work so far, and I think the progress that we're making and the conversations that we're having, all very good for the city. So looking forward to wrapping up our project in grand style again this year. Susan, how about you?
I just have a comment that my thoughts are with all the businesses in Clive that were closed down as of 5 o'clock tonight as a result of the governor's updated proclamation. And I'm really proud that our city has been an early one to step up to encourage people to wear masks. And if more will do that, this will prevent more of this kind of thing happening down the road. We all have to do it to support our businesses and keeping open.
Thank you, Susan. City Councilmember McCoy's not here. Madam Council, anything for the group?
Nothing. Thank you.
Okay, Matt.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just to pick up on your strategic planning comment, yeah, really excited. We had a good session with department directors today to put the action outlines together for all the items that we'll be reviewing with you all tomorrow for prioritization starting at 1 o'clock. Just wanted to confirm that Councilmember Klein and Weaver, do you still intend to be in person, as well as Mayor Cirksena tomorrow in the council chambers? Is that still the plan for you three?
Yes.
Yes.
All right,
Yes,
so we're good there. I will, for Councilmember Judkins and Edwards and McCoy, I will try to see if I, depending on when I get the document from Lyle, I'll try to see if I can get a printed copy out to you. John, I'm guessing you're going to probably be at Drake, so I'll just email it to you. Yeah. So, Councilmember Judkins, I'll try to get one out to you before the session starts tomorrow, and then depending on where Councilmember McCoy is at as well. And so really excited to wrap that up, and I think using this format worked pretty well considering the circumstances. So looking forward to that. Also wanted to take a minute just to show something fun in terms of the pile, as staff likes to refer to it. So earlier this week on Wednesday, early Wednesday morning, the Parks crew and the Public Works crew met each other at about 103rd Street and completed the curbside collection for all the derecho storm debris. So they got it done in 2 weeks, which is pretty awesome considering the amount of material, particularly on the east side of town. So just some fun photos that Pete took this morning. Here, there we go. This is a little closer photo of the piles that we have over at County Field here, and then of course Pete has to get in the photo as well. Pete and I joked that 2020 has made us both more gray than we have been. So anyway, just wanted to share that with the council. Really happy with the work done by our crews to get that done. There's still some chipping that Parks will be doing along the Greenbelt. Once the storm hit, they basically moved everything off of the trail just to get the trail reopened, but we need to go back and do some cleanup of some trails some trees that had fallen. So you'll be seeing some activity along the trail with the Parks taking the chipper along that. And then now we're in the mode of getting our hands on a tub grinder to take care of the big pile and then eventually haul out. Because I don't think we need that many wood chips. That'll last us about a decade. So we're going to dispose of some of the pile and leave some for residents for this fall and into next spring. So staff's doing a good job on working through this, and we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, which will end up being probably about a month's worth of work when it's all said and done, once we get the pile addressed for our crews. So great work by all those folks on that. And then lastly, Your Honor, just a reminder that I'll be on vacation next week, and we'll be back for the next council meeting.
Matt, thank you. Really proud of our crews and our people, just our team in addressing the derecho event. Never would have imagined the level of damage until well after the event occurred. And so obviously our thoughts and prayers are with the other communities like Cedar Rapids and other communities that really had substantial damage. We had a lot of damage, but there's a lot of communities that had significant damage and are still working through that. We've made tremendous progress here, so really proud of our team there. Counselor, any questions for Matt on anything?
Yeah, Matt, on that wood chip removal, are we working with any of the other communities, surrounding communities, to kind of collaborate and get one vendor and one price for that?
We're having those conversations. I know the state was trying to see if they could line something up, but we don't know how long that's going to take. I know our public works staff has been a part of, there's been regular Zoom calls with that Polk County Emergency Management has been coordinating amongst the public works directors. So we're trying to see if there's an opportunity to do that. That was my hope from the very beginning. I think it's just a question of timing. We're kind of ready to start taking care of this pile, where there's some other communities that are still collecting. So regardless of what we do, we're going to be seeking competitive quotes for that. Because the FEMA, we're hoping to get reimbursed by FEMA for this work. And so they require that as a part of that process that Matthew Graham knows very well as being kind of our FEMA expert. And so the one that I will have a question on too that we can potentially look at is transportation of removal of some of the pile. There might be an opportunity there, but again, in either case, we're going to look for quotes on that to make sure we get a good price for the city, and submit that for reimbursement to FEMA.
Thank you.
Matt, thank you. Matthew, any other correspondence that we need to be aware of?
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Thanks, Matthew. Council, anything else for the good of the order? Seeing none, I'm going to adjourn us at 7:02 p.m. Thank you all. Great work, and look forward to seeing you tomorrow afternoon for strategic planning. Have a great evening.
Have a good night.